Listen up. There's no more excuses. We're empowering those who want the hustle by exposing the status quo.
The days of ordinary are over.
It's time to crush mediocrity and start discovering your greatest potential.
Welcome to the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
Welcome back to the Hustle Nation podcast. Today we've got a treat. Miss Deb Curtis is in the house. Deb is an SBA business acquisition loan consultant and mentor to those seeking to purchase and finance established businesses. With a passion for helping others achieve financial freedom and build wealth, Deb empowers individuals with the opportunity to take ownership of a money-making business and secure their financial future. Deb's approach is rooted in belief that anything is possible with God, grit, and grace. She's committed to helping her clients achieve success every step of the way. She's also host of the Deb Curtis podcast, which I'm sure we'll get to. Deb, welcome to the show.
How are you, Chris? Nice to see you here and all your listeners. And Dustin, you're in the house too.
Right.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Well, thanks for coming. It's so nice to have you. Let's jump in. Tell the listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
All right. Who is Deb Curtis? How far back you want me to go, Chris? Take you back
let's just talk about maybe the last let's talk about kind of where you're at in your career and maybe how you got to this point. So it's up to you.
Okay. All right. Well, I think, where I am today as a business acquisition consultant, my life journey through my career has got me here. And I love your podcast theme of hustle because I have been raised from a young girl from an abandoned childhood to hustle. My father earned custody of me after being abandoned for about 18 months as the youngest daughter in a alcohol, drug-infested home. I was 9 years old when my parents divorced, and my mom, back in the day, she was adopted, and she struggled with Valium, which was a drug of choice back in the 70s, and alcohol. And I was the youngest of two. My oldest sister was going to UW Whitewater. We all know where that is. And I had another sister, older one, living at home. She was heading down the wrong path with drinking and drugs with my mom. And our home in the neighborhood was known for a lot of parties and soon turned into a drug house. And as time progressed, my mom had several warnings from the police, and little by little, she started to disappear. But I still lived in the home, which was a drug-infested mess. The last sister that was living with me moved out. I was all by myself, but I still walked to school every day. My Fox River Middle School was in the town where I grew up. Showed up every day, came home alone. We had a dog and a cat. Neighbors would offer me dinner, and on the weekends, they knew what was going on. But as what happens a lot in our life, the culture of silence tends to happen in neighborhoods, in workplaces, just anywhere. The culture of silence, people are afraid to say something. And I know these days today, we often hear, see something, say something. Well, we try, but not always. It's still a culture of silence, and we got to stop that stigma. Anyways, my dad got wind of it. My sister that was going to Whitewater would come home like once a month, and the home was getting worse. I was threatened by my mom not to say anything. It's a long story. I won't get into it. But my dad got immediate custody of me from the police department. And then it was a 2-year battle back in the day for my dad to win full custody of me. 2-year battle. I'm in 6th and 7th grade, crying every day in classrooms. being bullied, trying to hide what was going on in my life and not letting people know. The courts were not going to give my dad custody because back then the courts and the judges believed that the mothers still had to have custody of taking care of the kids, even with her background. So the only way my dad earned custody of me, the attorneys and the counselors had spoken to me. By that point, I was 11 years old. It was a long battle. And I had to basically raise my right hand in a courtroom with a jury with my mom and her group of attorneys on the left and my dad's on the right, and answered the questions at my age. And they felt, I know, they felt I was old enough to handle it. And I was. I spoke the truth, right? And I still, you had to. I swore to it. I spoke the truth. And I still speak the truth today. And I practice that integrity. And long story short, I forgive my mom. I'm taking care of her today. She's 80 years old. And my husband and I take care of her. She lives across town. But back then, my dad got custody. And then I was going to school, hustling in high school while my dad worked full-time and part-time. Couldn't afford to put me in college. So now I'm going to ramp up getting to where I am today. My senior year, junior year, high school, everyone's like, where are you going to school? What university going to? We were poor. I was just living with my dad, not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And it was another situation where you think you're not going to be bullied, but all of a sudden you're not the cool kid because you're not going to school. You're not going to college. And that hits home for me still today with children that are like my 16-year-old daughter here at home. She doesn't know what she wants to do or what college she wants to go to. And I told her, you don't need to know that now. Let's just hang on. So, but for some reason, we grew up all these decades that we have to know what we're going to be in our junior, senior year. And I knew I didn't know what it was going to be because I wasn't going to school, but I knew one thing. And my dad told me this. I might not be able to put you through school, Deb, but if you hustle your you-know-what off, you will make a way and you will do well in life. And I remember that. I'm like, hustle, and that I did. I thought to myself, if my friends all are going to school to become this or to become that and supposedly make all this money, I'm going to show them I can do it too. So my first job was at a finance company, my first career job, and I worked there for 18 years. 18 years because why, Dustin and Chris? Back then, corporate really took care of their employees with the benefits. I mean, my insurance premium for health insurance, I think my deductible was $250. Everything was paid for. You had beautiful benefits. And my dad would coach me, keep working hard, keep hustling, keep getting promotions. So I'm at this employer a total of 18 years. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, promotion, I got to get promoted. And I don't have an education. And part of the promotions to be a branch manager, state right in the disclosure, must have an education of 4 years, right? We see that a lot on job descriptions, must have an education. I thought, oh shit, I don't know if this is going to work. But I'm going to hustle and I'm going to show them I'm a damn good employee and I can do just as well as the managers that have college educations. And so it was a finance company. We did secondary auto paper, which means we would finance auto loans, and those that couldn't get approved at the bank were turned down. And then we at the finance company, we did the financing at a high interest rate. We put the paper on the books. And if the people paid their loan notes slow, we had to collect it. So I was collecting past due payments. And then as the borrower fell more behind in the state of Wisconsin, you have to cure them and then sue them, get your paper judgment, go repo the car. That's what the managers did. And that's what I did with the managers. But to get promoted, the male managers that did the repoing felt we don't want to promote a woman into this position. So now I'm faced with, okay, I've put in all these years of hard work, hustle, showing all of you I can be a top performer, and you're telling me I can't get promoted because I'm a woman? So I kept positively pushing them. I kept hustling to show them that I can do this job, and kept pushing them in a positively persistent way. You got to promote women. We can do this. When I'm collecting payments, I'm helping people, trying to get them to pay us and find a way, to get them back up to date. And, we have a way, women have a way that we can do this too. So they finally agreed to put me on a probationary period for 6 months with no additional pay to try her out, to see if a female could do this position. And we repossess cars. And back then you didn't hire a repo company. We didn't have cell phones back then. We had to have change in our car, find the vehicle somewhere in the city or the suburbs, go to the local payphone and call my tow truck guy, meet me on a corner, and go hook up the car and deal with the people as they come out arguing with you. That's what I did. Yeah.
Wow.
So I proved in the 6 months I can do this. And guess what? They promoted me. No education. I pushed positively. I stayed persistent and said, give us a chance, give women a chance in this role. Now we know, guys, this wouldn't happen today, or if it is still happening today, which it could be, I hope we're better at fair and equal treatment. But the best news about it is the guys respected me, and I paved the way for other women to get promoted from that moment on. So 18 years in that role, then I decided, okay, I need to try good credit and, work at a bank instead of working with the people that have poor credit. And so then I worked at a bank, and that's how I got introduced into business banking, working with small business owners. I have a background of credit from auto paper, and trust me, I worked with all men managers from big banks, regional banks, community banks, non-banks. I learned so much from the guys that, that's almost like a college education, right?
Yeah.
Working and hustling is similar to an education because you're in the trenches. In fact, I would say it's probably even more than a college education.
Yeah.
So I was introduced to SBA lending, I'd say about 10 years ago, and all roads for small businesses lead to SBA when the traditional banks say no. Not if, when they say no, if the collateral's not there. The cash flow, guys, has to be there. That's the key. It's the business has to prove it's got cash flow, that it's earning money to make the SBA loan payment. If there's no collateral, that's what the SBA is for, the government guarantee to back up the bank. Okay. So I was an SBA lender, and lots of different credit requests with SBA lending, and business acquisition financing was one I liked. Very male dominated industry with, business brokers selling small businesses. And, a lot of men today are business owners that acquire established, profitable small businesses, and I'm working with them. I love them. I love them all. But I am an advocate still today for women also to become educated through me and my experiences. How do you buy an established, profitable small business? Because you don't get this at universities. Nobody teaches you how do you buy a small business. Where do you get that from? Right? So
Sure.
that's what I'm passionate about. I'll help all male, female, I'll help everybody. I'll help them all. But I would love to promote more of our minority population to business owners through the SBA. And it's for everybody. And that's where I'm here today. So I gave you a long journey, boys.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there, Deb, but you hit one thing there toward the end, which was financial education. I'm in the process of, I don't know how it's taken this long, but just getting through the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it did strike me that even someone like me with a college education and people I know with an MBA, the real true financial education does not happen in higher education, unfortunately. So I think for some of our listeners out there who may be listening right now, let's take it down, distill it down to its simplest form. Tell everybody what an SBA loan is and where do they even go about getting one if they're in need of some type of financing or financial assistance?
And that is a wonderful question. And it's high, wide, long, deep. So let me give you the answer. SBA stands for Small Business Administration. And it's an affiliate of our government that supports small businesses that have lending needs. And typical credit requests for SBA loans are if you want to start up a business, brand new, you've got a hobby, an idea, you want to be a coach, you want to make money with a podcast, right? That's a business too. You get sponsors and you're paid. Startups, purchase financing, established small businesses. That's my niche. That's what I specialize in. There's the silver tsunami, which we call baby boomers, that own these small businesses. They're all, 60, 70, some are even as old as 80, and they're still operating their businesses or hanging around them anyways, and they got to sell them. So we call it the silver tsunami meets the great resignation. That's kind of the talk, and there's so much opportunity out there. So where do they go to get these loans? They go to either their local community bank, they can go to a big bank, they can go to a regional bank, they can go to a credit union. What they want to do is understand that wherever they go, that their bank or non-bank lender or credit union is a preferred SBA lender. And what that means is their team of people in-house are licensed by the government, that they underwrite, process, and close and handle everything in-house at that bank. There are community banks out there that I've worked for in the past, and they're not a licensed SBA preferred lender, so they don't do SBA lending. And if they do, it's tedious because they have to package it up and approve it themselves and then ship it out to a local government office that then they underwrite it. You will get done much faster with your credit decision if you deal with a preferred lender. Where it gets confusing for all borrowers, and one day I hope our government will change this. The SBA has its own credit policy. The acronym is called SOP, Standard Operating Procedure, and all banks have to follow the SBA's credit policy. But then think of all the big banks, the Wells Fargos, the regional banks, Associated Bank, the community banks, maybe a Johnson Bank, all the credit unions, maybe Summit Credit Union. Think of all of the different institutions out there that offer business loans with SBA. They have their credit policies. So it gets confusing. They have to follow the SBA, all these lenders, but then all these lenders have their credit policies that are all different. So Chris, you could call 3 banks today and say, I want to borrow $500,000 because I want to buy a business. And they'll ask you a few more details, those 3 different banks, and they'll all give you 3 different decisions of how to get it done. That's how confusing it is.
So Deb, are you focused on finding the business and connecting buyers and sellers? Are you focused on the financing or both?
Yeah, great question. I am a consultant, loan consultant, because I've worked for the big banks, the regional banks. I've worked for them all. And that's what led me to this point in my career. My business is Curtis Business Curtis Small Business Finance Solutions, and I focus solely on business acquisition transactions, finding one of those lenders, all those different lenders, different credit policies, the best capital for my business buyer that either has a business that he wants to buy today and he's showing it to me, or they want to get qualified as a buyer, and then we can go out together online. I mean, you can find a home online, you can find a business online. That's just the way it is. It's all on the market today. I look at first-time home buyers. You know how you have to get a pre-approval letter to find out what do you qualify for to buy a home, right? A lot of first-time home buyers don't know that. Well, you want that as a first-time business owner. What do I qualify for? You're going to need cash down, right? It's just like buying a home. You're going to need good credit. It's like you're a first-time small business buyer. And I help with that to get them pre-qualified and then find the business that they're looking for. Or sometimes somebody already contacted a broker and they know they have good credit and they have cash. They found their business and they're ready to go. Well, then I help them find the capital at all these different banks that I was talking about.
Excellent.
I speed up the process. Yeah.
So, when you talk about your childhood and the struggles you've gone through, and obviously the success you've had, and running your own business and things like that, from a mindset perspective, you've had to handle a lot, overcome a lot, and yet remain positive, remain focused on getting it better every day.
Mm-hmm.
What have you found just from a mindset perspective has helped you keep focused on always looking forward, always looking to improve and make that impact?
Oh man, that's a great question.
And you could have gone the other way so many times. You could have quit and given up, but you didn't.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for saying that, Chris. And to this day, there are moments that sometimes I think I got to quit again, right? We all go through that. But what means to me, Dustin, is helping people get to that place where they want to be. And gosh, just this week I was talking to a few buyers just by Zoom, and they're really new at just talking about, how do I do this? Because again, who teaches this stuff? So it's like they're almost embarrassed that they don't know even how to start a conversation. But once you get talking with me, this one buyer, I mean, his whole demeanor was like you could just tell his body posture and everything. And he's on disability, and he's just looking for another avenue, maybe to get off disability and buy a business. And I'm telling you, he's got the smarts. He's got cash. I said, rise up. We can find a way to get this done. And to answer your question, Devin, it comes back to that abandoned kid that didn't feel loved, or that girl that had to wait in the hot lunch line for the different colored hot lunch tickets for the families that got free meals because their income was so low. Rise up, people. It's now our choices, and our future is in our hands. My mom made the wrong choices back then, but she had a rough life herself that I learned about now all these years later. She's 80 years old and telling me about her life. Everybody's got these stories, guys. That's my passion, to help people become a business owner and become more, because corporate America might not be making people feel they're worthy enough to do something like this. Do you know how many people out there have been waiting for a job promotion because they're passed over and over, but yet they've got the management skills and the smarts, and they could take over one of these businesses? I get excited about that because it takes me back to all the times that everything in my life told me I was going to fail. And I'm like, no, not on my watch.
Yeah, I think your situation, your current situation, doesn't mean you can't get to where you want to be. It doesn't prevent you, but it
Mhm.
can limit your mindset, and that's really what's so interesting, and a lot of what we try to help people with. Deb, I want to go back to the financing conversation. I
Okay.
was fortunate enough last year to sell a business, and since I've done a lot of research in the real estate market, someplace I'd love to be in the near future. I hear a lot of people talking about creative financing, and I know that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But one of the things that I was fortunate to do was a seller finance deal. I know that comes with
Mhm.
a lot of risk, but I would love to hear your thoughts on creative financing.
Mhm.
And do you think it's a viable option? Are you seeing more people go that route?
Yes. There are a lot of other options out there besides SBA lending to acquire a business with you need capital to buy a building, you need capital to buy a business, to buy a home. There's a lot of money out there with investment companies, private equity firms, or like in your case, seller financing. Um, and the SBA, for your audience, in case they're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have all this cash. Well, if you have some, that's good because the SBA will allow you to split some of your required down payment with some seller financing. So keep that in mind. Um, but my rule of thumb is if you're going to go down any road that a bank lender perhaps isn't underwriting and doing due diligence. And listen, you want due diligence when you're going to buy something. When you buy a home, you want an inspection done to make sure the toilets flush properly. You don't, I mean, think, what do we hear about during the housing market when homes were selling within 5 minutes, and now all the people are in these homes that were flipped and they hid everything and all the crap is happening. Well, that's where you got to be careful if you do 100% seller financing, because is the seller doing due diligence on that business that you're paying him for or that property? No. But I'll tell you what, people complain about a bank and SBA lending and it takes forever. Well, because we're doing due diligence to protect you, the buyer, and the bank to make sure that our government guarantee is in place. So, yes, you can do seller financing, but my word of advice is pull in an experienced business attorney that knows how to write up seller notes. I have had um, owners of like restaurants locally here in Wisconsin come to me with a seller note that they've been paying on for 5 years or what have you, and they want to refinance that seller note into an SBA loan. The verbiage in those seller notes, I can't. It's so ugly, and the so you got to protect yourselves. Can you do it? Yes. Is there private equity? Are there investment firms? Yes, but again, be careful. Some of these investment firms will say, "Hey, Chris, we want you to be a partner with us, buy this business, but we don't want to guarantee it. So we're going to be like 5% owner. You're going to be majority owner and you're going to personally guarantee it, which means you're probably going to put your home up for collateral if you have equity. So remember that." And then they're like, "But we'll put all the money down for you and have this bank finance it with the SBA." And then all of a sudden there's a management services agreement with the investment company. And I've read a few of them recently. And it'll say, well, yeah, Chris is majority owner and he's guaranteeing the loan, but his management service agreement says all the profits of the company that Chris is owner operating have to go to them. And if you move too quick and you don't want to do things, you don't want to hire an attorney because you think it's just too expensive, you're just dealing with risk. So yes, Chris, all those options are viable. And I'm not talking bad because there are good investment situations, good private equity, good sellers. Always have attorney representation. Always.
I think it's risky on both sides, both for the seller in that the asset. If it's not a building, something can be picked up and taken away. It could disappear and you may never get your money.
Yeah.
And it's also risky for the buyer in the fact that, given the terms of the contract, if they weren't reviewed properly, I mean, that individual could go and repossess the business or the assets. So
Mhm.
it can be a tricky slope, no question about that.
Yep.
I'm curious, just being naturally very inquisitive in the entrepreneurship, business world, investments. A lot of people now are talking about the recession. Is it
Mhm.
here? Is it coming? We can debate that all we want. But ultimately, with that looming, is this still a good time to sell? Or if you're a buyer, is it still a good time to buy?
Mhm. Yes. It's always a good time. Um, and it's always a good time because the right business owners survive the market up and down over and over again. The right business owners. I'm saying that because not all of them will survive because they're not as strategic or willing to try something new. I think about the pandemic when it hit in 2020. Restaurants. We saw a lot of restaurants go out of business, right? But we also saw a lot of restaurants that did better during the pandemic when their seating areas were closed because they immediately moved into, carry out, delivery, online website ordering, and they just got so good at what they did. They kept those practices in place, and now the doors are open. Those people that want to come in and sit down are coming in to sit down. I'm still one that likes to order and pick up and come home and watch TV and eat. It's crazy. So the market today is still fine. Ask baby boomers that are selling, that can sell because their businesses are profitable today. They'll tell you stories about every freaking market that they've been through and how they got through it and what did they do, to be creative, to survive that market and just, I hate to say the word, but we talk about it, pivot, pivot, adapt, do what you got to do. That's what business owners do. Now, when I interview people that want to buy a business, I think about your hustle podcast. The first thing I want to know, I think of hustle. Do you have fire in the belly? And you can't be taught fire in the belly. You can't be taught to hustle. You either have it or you don't. So if you have it and you want to be a business owner, you will survive the roller coasters of markets. So this market today is absolutely fine to purchase, finance a business. The downside right now is sellers because they need to bring their price down a bit because the interest rate market is high right now. What does that mean? Your business that you're buying, your monthly payment is going to have a higher interest rate today. So therefore, the cash flow is going to be sucked up more by your SBA loan payment. But your lender, your bank lender that's doing the SBA financing is going to stress test the whole loan project, adding another 2% to the current rate to make sure if rates keep going up, this business will still survive based on the historical financials and that our new owner is going to, come in and if it's not broke, why fix it? Just kind of keep managing the way that it's been. And then eventually rates are going to come down, guys. I mean, we think, now I'm not the feds, but we think we're at the high water mark. There may be one more. There's talk it might sit for a while. We got an election coming. So much can change. You know how that goes. I really believe now is the time to be looking for those businesses that have the cash flow that can afford today's rate environment. What you got to be cognizant of is the industry and can it sustain? I think of like contractors, contracting businesses, the market that it's in. I'm always coaching my buyers. Where do you go to find more contractors? Because there has been a shortage of them. There's always got to be a thought in your mind. Where am I going to get my next workers? Stuff like that. So I hope that answered the question. It really comes down to the owner and the buyer today and their strategies in place. And it's not, let's do a business plan. I want to buy this business and never relook at the business plan again. We're looking at that business plan almost every month. Yeah.
Deb, you talk about the passion you have to show other people the way and help them along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the fire in the belly and, whether people have it or not. In your travels, are there times where someone is coming to you saying, I want to buy a business, I want to be a business owner, and you can just tell this just isn't for you, because, they don't have the fire belly, or
Mm-hmm.
are there certain characteristics that you see that you find yourself almost saying, maybe this isn't the right thing for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think back to a year ago, I had two guys there. They were friends and they wanted to be partners, purchase financing a business. And one partner really had the gumption, the fire in the belly, but the other one just never showed up all the time. But he had more of the knowledge in the industry than the other guy. So they kind of were a fit because one guy had knowledge of the industry. The other partner was good at marketing, sales, managing people. So I thought, that's two guys that could probably be put together. But the one that had knowledge in the industry, he just kept not showing up on our calls because I mentor and coach the buyers through the journey of putting together their package that's presented to the SBA. And my one guy that's in marketing, he was good, and I'm like, okay, we're so and so, and he's like, oh, now he had something else come up. And what happens is there's an interview with the buyers with the SBA underwriter right before final approval, which is usually with the final decision maker, the chief of credit. They want to see, is Chris and Dustin, they're the two partners. Do we think they've got hustle on their forehead and fire in the belly? And the one partner that had the industry experience showed up on this interview call, and it was a Zoom. And my chief of credit said, by golly, it looked like he just got out of bed. He wasn't dressed up. It was like he was in his pajamas still. The wife is in the background yelling at him to take the dog out. The dog has got to go to the bathroom, and he's screaming at his kids. And the chief of credit's like, this is like a big decision. It's like a $2 million purchase finance acquisition. And the guy with the industry knowledge is distracted on this call by kids, wife, dog. Looks like he just crawled out of bed. The deal got turned down.
Yeah.
So there's you can tell. I bet you the two of you could tell in all your years who's got drive and who's got fire.
I'm not surprised by that one bit. I'm not surprised at all. Deb,
yeah.
It's interesting. You talk about some of the baby boomers and this silver tsunami. There are a lot of people even younger like me who have businesses who are thinking, I wonder if it's time to move on. And for any number of reasons, how do you know when it's time to sell a business or move on?
Mm-hmm. I would say one of the biggest mistakes that business owners make is probably the best time to move on is when the going is good. And I mean that. When the going is really good, that's probably a good time to get out and sell. Because generally these owners will hang on too long and then they get burned out. Or here's the deal though. I mean, Chris, you could have a business and eventually just train up your employees and have key employees running the show. And then you become what's known as an absentee owner. We love those businesses for new buyers. You want to buy one of those businesses, Chris. If you want to buy an absentee owned business, you want that because what are you going to do when you buy that business? Just oversee it, check with your key employee, your general manager, everything in order. Boom, you've got a great asset, a great investment. But to determine when it's time to sell, I coach my buyers, because when I worked at banks, I had loan portfolios of small business owners. One of the number one questions that one of my male supervisors told me when you meet with small business owners is, what is your succession plan, contingency plan, exit plan? Ask that all the time of business owners when you walk in and see them. What's your exit plan? And if they tell you, oh, I don't need one, I'll get to that when I want to get to that, because that's what they say. But here's the deal. How do you know when you're going to exit? You may say, I'm not going to retire for 10 more years. What if you walk out the door and a car hits you and you're done? Is your business ready to sell? Guys, do you know how many businesses?
Probably not.
Thank you. Do you know how many businesses I've seen where that has happened and they leave a wife and kids in disarray and nobody knows how to run this business because he never planned to sell his business? Not that he was going to sell it, but it should always, always, always be ready to sell in case something happens like that. Or a good buyer comes in, top dollar. I mean, I don't think we would turn down a top dollar offer. That's because your business is ready to sell. We have to get to the point where we improve that 80% of the businesses on the market today won't sell because of poor financials, poor operations, or the business owner is just working in the business every day, not out of the business. That 80% factor has been around for my whole career. And by golly, I want to leave this earth one day knowing that that number comes down because of my voice of reason, to try to get these new business owners to wake up and prepare your business to sell the day you take ownership. That's it. That's the message.
So Deb, one of the things in any M&A deal that I always think is interesting is really two things that I've always seen to be true. One, the seller always knows more than the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And, two, it all comes down to HR and IT, right? It's all people and process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you coach people through that, right? So, on the buy side, recognizing that no matter how hard you try, no matter what due diligence, there could always be something lurking there, and then, implementing the shift as efficiently as possible.
You mean the shift of owner transition?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's part of our due diligence. We study the employees of the business, who's doing what, when, and where. What is the owner doing today? Does he have a spouse that's getting paid a W-2, but she's not there? Or maybe she is there. We don't know. We have to be careful because sometimes we'll see businesses listed as absentee owned, and all of a sudden the buyer buys the business and goes in, and that was just mismarketing by somebody, and it's not absentee owned. That happens. So there are questions that I'll coach the buyers to ask the sellers, because they're going to be in conversation with them a lot. If it's an absentee owned business and a buyer asks the seller, hey, where'd you go last time you went on a vacation? If they tell you it's been 5 years, it's not an absentee owned business. If they say it's been 5 years since they took a vacation, I mean, common sense. Yeah. This stuff happens. Did I answer that? Let me retract that. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. It's just it's a lot of due diligence. That would be, you can't do it alone as a buyer. Your lender or your loan consultant is going to be your best ally when it comes to due diligence. And like you said, Dustin, the seller is going to have a lot of stories about what this business future can look like. Okay, that's great. But it's the IRS tax returns that are going to tell us historically, can it afford this price?
Yes.
SBA loans aren't meant to fund the seller's wealth and retirement. They're meant to fund the buyer, and as a prudent bank lender, make sure that the buyer's successful and that the bank gets paid back.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Awesome. Deb, let's move to strategy. You mentioned something before about business owners having a plan. I come from a marketing background, and I'm fortunate to get to do a lot of public speaking. And it's not uncommon when one of the first questions I ask when I take the stage is, "Who has a strategy?" And I'm typically referring to marketing, but it refers to business as well. And I kid you not, it is surprising if 10% of the room raises their hand. And then I'll say something like, "Okay, but who has one actually in document format?" Which means you have a real one, not the one in your head. And
Mhm.
3 or 4 more hands will go down. And
Mm.
typically it's an average about 5 or 6% of the people in a room. And I'm not talking about entrepreneurs, I'm talking about actual businesses
Mhm.
have a strategy. And then I always say things like, how do you know what's working? What is your North Star? What are your goals? What are your objectives? And typically if they have them, they're just made up, totally arbitrary numbers. What do you see as it relates to business plans and strategies in your world? And how important is that to the success of these businesses?
Mhm. It's so important, Chris. And sadly, I don't think business owners do a fair enough job of reviewing business plans on an annual basis on their own. And then, of course, they could hire and engage business advisors, exit planners, business coaches, marketing, folks. But they don't want to expense it. And it's like sometimes the right expenses reap investment returns. Buying, a Tesla as a business owner and parking it in the front parking lot next to the handicap slot of your building of where the business operates, that's probably not a good expense to the business that's going to bring return. Drive through industrial parks. I kid you not. And you'll see a lot of fancy cars parked right in the front row because they're so proud of it, which is fine. I don't take that away from hustle and hard work because a lot of business owners, that's what they're all about. But don't waste your hustle and hard work and spend it on the wrong things that don't give you return. And I just want to share that buying these baby boomer businesses, marketing is a piece that is always lacking because they don't want anything to do with technology. And good Lord, are we flying with technology today? So when I get buyers that are younger, Gen Xers and millennials, we're looking at that business plan, Chris, and we're putting together where can we grow the business? And 9 times out of 10, it's always improve efficiencies with technology and marketing, as simple as a website or an email list. These baby boomers just still have a spiral notebook and their pencil with eraser, and they're profitable. It's amazing. So that business plan is so important. And then following through, we prepare 3 years of projections with assumptions. We're looking at all categories. And at that point, when the loan's funded, I'm pretty much released. So I will recommend to them to hook up with the right CPA, the right advisors, the right marketing people, and utilize expenses in the right way that are going to give you return and grow that bottom line. So I hope that answered, but you got to visit it at least quarterly, semi-annually, once a year. And if they're not, they're missing out. They're going to lose.
I agree. I think the other part where a lot of these businesses go wrong is that I've seen these 30-page strategies, and when you have that, it's just so overwhelming, filled
Mm-hmm.
with so much fluff that you're not even going to look at it because it's just the thought of it stresses you out. So I think a lot of businesses can do themselves a favor by cutting all the fat and limiting that to a 1 or
Yeah.
2-page document.
Less is
Deb,
more.
yeah, oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap this conversation up. So we would love to have you back on and talk more about this subject. Before we go, what are some final thoughts, final pieces of maybe recommendations you'd give some people listening who are maybe thinking about buying or selling or looking at an SBA loan right now?
Yeah. I would like to close with just diversify opportunities in your life, especially if you're, 35, 45, a Gen Xer, you got to have diversity. And to purchase finance a business with the SBA doesn't mean you have to quit your corporate job. You can keep a corporate job. It just really all depends upon the seller of the business you want to buy and what their role is. If it's an absentee-owned business and we verified it and all you got to do is oversee it, you can keep your corporate job. But then, Chris, there are people that want to leave their corporate job, right? And that's fine too. Diversify. That would be my message. Where do you go? Start at your local banks. We could have another hour talking about local, city, and state grants for small businesses. I mean, there's so much to talk to, but always start with your local bank and make sure they're a preferred lender, a preferred SBA lender.
Awesome. Deb, this has been great. Very educational, very fun. I really would love to extend the conversation, but we're going to have you back on again. Before we go, where can people find you and where can they find your podcast? Because I know that's something you've just launched recently.
And actually my podcast right now is LinkedIn audio. If you go all my social channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, all that stuff, Twitter, my handle is Deb Jojo, J-O-J-O Curtis. Deb Jojo Curtis. I have a website. It's just debcurtis.com. Presently, I'm doing LinkedIn audios, which is like a podcast, but it's on the LinkedIn platform. So you can connect with me there. I do weekly podcasts educating people about business acquisition financing. That's trying to make it easy. Joe is my middle name, so my nickname's JoJo, but you can call me Deb. That's cool.
Debbie Joe. I love it.
That's right.
Awesome.
That sounds like my family.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining the show today. We really appreciate your time. Definitely educational for me, especially around a subject that I think everybody could use a little bit more knowledge. So
yes.
Thank you to the listeners for joining us today. We appreciate your time and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Thank you for being part of the Hustle Nation. If you're serious about raising the bar in your personal and professional life and willing to go all in on your success, head over to hustleleaders.com. Here you can get access to our Hustle Productivity ebook, attend our Hustle Masterclass, or challenge yourself to the 30-day Hustle Challenge. Pairing these tools and training with the Hustle Nation podcast will help you advance to a whole new level. Until next time, stay hungry and inspire those around you to hustle.